We're back to the Neil Haley Show, and I'm excited first to welcome my co-host, David Hollenbach of Hollenbach Leadership. David, how are you? And I know you're excited about our guest, and he's a podcaster, growing, but a great setup and a great mission. How are you, David?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me again.
Our guest today is podcaster Ken McMullen. And Ken, you're going to talk about your journey as a podcaster and how you're using your faith to grow things to a level and your mission. Ken, thanks for stopping by, man.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me. This is fun.
Tell me how this whole podcasting thing started. You have the great setup. I love it. I love your background, everything, podcast,
thanks.
Everything. How did it all start for you?
Yeah, well, I haven't been doing it all that long, but back in the day, in my early youth, quarter century ago, I used to do radio. Then I went into VJing, so kind of music television hosting in the television world. And I did that 8 to 10 years or so. That's what my major in school was, broadcaster. And it was faith-based. I did all Christian pop music, and I didn't do talking other than coming up, the latest from Michael W. Smith. You know, it was kind of that thing. So I did it locally. I did it in Nashville, Florida. And long story short with that is I kind of decided to go more hands-on ministry, then kind of went off into the family world and business world. And in the meantime, this podcast world had developed, and I got my hands in it a little bit through corporate kind of work. And literally I was sitting on my couch a while back, and I thought, you know what, I've got a little bit of experience in the past. I used to interview people. I used to talk behind a mic. I miss it. And now I know how this podcast, I put up a web page that basically said, you know what, I've had an interesting life. I've met interesting people. And I'm just going to pop on, not for YouTube fame or anything or monetization at first. I'm just going to bring on some of my old friends as an excuse to contact them and let some of my other friends hear their crazy stories. And so it started out as Becoming Outlaws, stories of divine encounters. So it was kind of geared towards come and tell me your God story, like a ghost story. But from celebrities to everyday people to people you wouldn't even maybe know were Christian, but they've had some profound spiritual experience. Let's just put it out there. And it took off from there, getting great guests. And it's morphed into more of conversational, theological. I'll have scholars on. We'll talk about the latest happenings in the Pentagon, what's going on with some guys saying that there's UFOs and the government's hiding it. And I'll have a Hugh Ross, a Christian astrophysicist, give his take on it. Or maybe I've had recently Frankie Ballard, a country music star who in the last 2 years became a born again believer and now is figuring out what that means for his country music career. And we'll just talk about it, you know, live on a podcast. And that's really how it developed. And I've just taken one episode at a time, and it's kind of morphed into where I'm at today. And I kind of like where it's at. It's got a good vibe.
Wow. Unbelievable how the internet works, how we find each other. But go ahead, David, with a question you have for him.
Yeah, no, I was checking out your website earlier, and the path that you've been on has developed this passion for really being a student of religion, and not just Christianity, but learning about various faiths, cults, and that kind of thing. And I like what you said on your website, where it says that you're not looking for other truths, but wanted to learn about these other faiths to improve the conversations that you've been having with people. And that struck me as really interesting. Now, from all these different conversations that you've been having, what would you say is the most profound conversation that you've had that was not a Christian guest that you had?
Yeah. So the answer is Dr. Richard B. Spence, who just retired as a professor of a history of the occult, Russian espionage, and secret societies from the University of Utah. And he hosts several History Channel shows and other documentary type channels where it would be, if you see Secrets of the Masons, he could be hosting it. Secrets of the Occult, and it'd be like a 24 episode series, and he does all the research and he hosts them. So his voice to me is iconic because I watch all that kind of stuff. So he's a good example. The majority of people I have on, the Becoming Outlaws is becoming Christian, basically. So there's stories of conversion, but it's expanded a little beyond that, in that it's always, I'm a Christian, so I never take it out of that. But like what you were pointing out on the website is, I've always been interested in belief systems, religions, cults, not because I'm fascinated by the darkness of it or want to join them. It's because all society has been built on beliefs. And if you ignore that, you really don't know what's going on in the world, in politics or government or society. Ancient cultures to modern day cultures, they're built on what do we believe as a human, and then our community and our society. So I do enjoy, and I will do more of it. But to get back to the answer of Dr. Spence is, I asked if he would come on, and after, he's not an occultist himself, he's an expert. However, he's a self-proclaimed agnostic. And in his view, that would mean that he knows enough, has studied enough, and has experienced enough to know that there's something spiritual out there. And it's unknown, and he's not sure what it is, but something's happening. And he puts all religion and beliefs under the occult, because occult means hidden knowledge. Mm-hmm. So probably my favorite, so he even puts Christianity under the occult. So my favorite was to invite him, and he was surprised to be invited. But that's what I don't want to be in the Christian culture clique. And I have lots of Christians that listen. Right. But I also have New Agers, I have Buddhists, I have occultists, I have some Satanists I know. And I get, it sounds like I shouldn't be proud of this, but I get the best feedback from them. And I'm the most proud of that, because I don't back down on my faith at all, but I'm not judging where they're at. I'm trying to have conversations they might be interested in, and treat them with respect, because they're smart people. And I respect them more than people that don't have a viewpoint in the spiritual world. Yeah. So with Richard B. Spence, he was brave enough and kind enough to come on and share enlightening things about the occultic history of Santa Claus or whatever. It's pretty interesting, actually. And he then allowed me to ask him, what do you believe and why do you believe it? And he went into stories of, like, when he was younger and they were playing with the Ouija board, it spelt out that it felt like it went by itself, and it said somebody in the room was going to lose their head. And it wasn't soon after one of the group got decapitated in a car accident. Oh my God. And that directed his whole life and career to become a historian in the occult, because he's fascinated in spiritual stories, because he knows that couldn't have been a coincidence. Something dark happened. So then I'm able to say and listen respectfully to his viewpoint, because he's a smart man and he has a viewpoint for a reason. And he even grew up in a Christian church, but that doesn't mean it took. And I'd say, you like to hear spiritual stories. Would you like to hear mine? Wow. And then I'm able to, with a History Channel guy, sit in one-on-one, tell him what you would call my testimony. And I feel like in what I didn't want to start is just another church Bible study thing, where the only people hearing me are the same people that already know this stuff. Yeah, exactly. You're going out and speaking it. So what celebrities have you interviewed that are in the Christian world on your show? Let's see who's on there. Oh, probably, I don't know if you call a celebrity. One of my most honored who came on early on was Dr. Elvita King. Okay, I've had her on my show too. She's amazing. Have you? Yeah, back in the day, just audio back in the day when she was really popular, and I reached out and all that. She's amazing, isn't she? Yep. Yeah, what she talked about, I asked her about her dad, her dad's assassination. He was a civil rights leader just as much as her uncle, side by side. Just one guy has to be the front guy. But her dad was just as much. He got murdered in a pool soon after. She heard a phone conversation. Last thing she ever heard her dad say was yelling on the phone, "I know you did it." And he was like the next day found floating in his pool, and he was an expert swimmer, stuff like that. But yeah, I have her on there singing a cappella, "This Little Light of Mine." That was probably one of my highlights of everything I've ever done, is having her sing that.
So any of the other ones you said that you worked with back in the day in the Christian world, have you not had any of them on yet or not?
Yeah. Some people like Michael Card, that I consider an icon and a founder of, well, he comes out of the Jesus movement music, folk music, and I'll probably have him on again soon. He was one of my first ones. I'd like to go back to nostalgic to like when I was a kid in the 70s. I think of who was like a rock star to me, and now I can probably talk to them. So I go back and I got Don Francisco, the guy who did He's Alive. You hear like every Easter. Do you remember that song? It was in 1980. It was the song of the year. And Don Francisco, he's still alive. Found him, brought him on.
There's a lot of people that you can be bringing on to have those conversations with, especially with the Christian world, how it's popularity and all that stuff, and potentially to work with me, because I do also interview a lot of people from The Chosen and all those places and all that stuff. So really trying to put some things together that could be a collaboration. Where's the best place people can find information on your podcast? Where can they go?
Yeah, well, Dave was just on the website. I would go there. It's becomingoutlaws.com. And then you can find all the places you can follow on the podcast, which is at pretty much every major podcast outlet. I do throw out the reels on TikTok. This stuff's crazy. I probably get the most activity. You put a reel out on TikTok on something of UFO thing, they go nuts on that stuff. TikTok, I do put this stuff on YouTube, Spotify, because it has video. And I really hang out on Facebook a lot. I know the youngsters say all the old people are there, but I'm there, and I have a Becoming Outlaws community, and I post everything there, blogs and
all right, fantastic,
in every episode. So,
well, it was great stuff. We appreciate you coming by, and a great idea branding, right, David? With Becoming Outlaws, it's really good branding. Yeah. I think, yeah. And he's putting the time in, and he's got some opportunities going. So we appreciate you coming on the show, and thanks again.
All right, thanks, Neil. Thanks, Dave.
You're listening and watching the Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back in just a moment.